on this edition of the Fifth Estate. May 2005, the Queen and Prince Philip in Canada. In command of their flight, an officer on his way up in the Canadian Forces, Lieutenant Colonel Russell Williams, rising through the ranks, if not a household name, yet.
Arrested Russell Williams, 46 of Tweed, for first-degree murder.
Russell Williams would not be on this past summer's royal visit. Once the model of a military man, he's now accused of a bizarre and violent crime spree. 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 brutal sexual assaults, 82 break, enter, and theft-related charges. Tonight, the story as you haven't heard it told before, from the victims.
I have bad dreams, nightmares, but I can't stay alone very well.
The commanding officer.
How could we have missed this? Is there something that we did or didn't do that would have given us a clue?
His longtime friend.
I heard the name Williams, and I heard murder, charge. It felt like someone had kicked me in the groin as hard as they could a couple of times. I vomited. I just couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it.
Hello, I'm Bob McEwen. Welcome to a new season of the Fifth Estate. Colonel Russell Williams seemed the embodiment of the military ideals of duty and honor. Pilot for prime ministers and royalty, commander of the secret Canadian base in the Persian Gulf, and in 2009 appointed commanding officer of Canada's biggest, most important Air Force base here in Trenton, Ontario. Russell Williams' fall from grace is a frightening reminder of the unpredictability of human behavior. We should remind you that none of the charges against him have yet been proven in court. This is what we've discovered. It started under the radar, under cover of darkness, with a mysterious person stalking the Ottawa suburb of Orleans, and a series of break-ins, like the one that took place in January 2009. A family returned from a trip to Toronto. As their teenage girl unpacked, she noticed something strange.
My daughter came running down the stairs telling us that all her underwear were gone out of her drawer. And we kind of laughed and said, check the floor, because you know how teenagers are, or check the laundry or whatever. And she said, no, I'm serious, there's nothing left in my drawer.
Brenda Constantine and her husband Brian Rogers wouldn't laugh for long when their daughter discovered what else was missing.
She went back up and she realized there were dresses gone, there were shoes gone, all her bathing suits, photographs of herself had gone.
Someone had gone through their family albums, selecting pictures of their 15-year-old daughter, and police found something even more disturbing.
They did tell us that they took some DNA evidence from my daughter's bedroom, from her bureau, where the underwear drawer around that area.
They warned us to wash it with bleach.
Clean everything, and of course my daughter didn't sleep in her bedroom for 3 months after that.
For Brenda and Brian, the crime was both bizarre and terrifying. Someone was targeting their 15-year-old.
We wouldn't let her go anywhere or do anything alone. She wasn't allowed to stay home alone. Her brothers basically were her bodyguards for the day, and us, and we had friends looking out for her as well.
Orleans, Ontario is a bedroom community for the nation's capital, home to many members of the military and their families. At the time, they included Russell Williams and his wife. On the fast track in the forces, Lieutenant Colonel Williams had been commander of Canada's Air Transport Squadron, a key job at a time of war.
The importance of leadership, the challenges of command.
The commanding officer of Canada's Air Force was then Lieutenant General Angus Watt. Now retired, the general says that even under the constant scrutiny and evaluation of military life, Williams was one of the best and brightest.
Unusually calm, very logical, very rational, and able to produce good quality staff work in a fairly short time, which is a valued commodity in Ottawa.
But in Russell Williams' neighborhood in the suburb of Orleans, the mood was far from calm.
And, I remember talking to friends and that, and some of them would be really spooked, and some others would, take it with a grain of salt almost. But, the ones that were really spooked were really spooked.
During 2008 and 2009, there were 34 similar break-ins and attempted break-ins in the area, resulting in the theft of hundreds of intimate female garments, all from homes not far from the house where Lieutenant Colonel Williams lived. Ottawa police warned residents to be vigilant. They called the incidents very peculiar in nature. The search for a suspect was on. At that same time, another search was underway to fill one of the key positions in Canada's Air Force, commanding officer at CFB Trenton. Lieutenant General Angus Watt eventually signed off on the successful candidate, Russell Williams.
You have to be good with people. In other words, you have to be a good leader. You have to be good with administration. You have to be good with the media and good with the public. It all has to come together in a package that gives us confidence that you will do well as a wing commander, and Russ had all of that package.
When Canada is at war, nowhere is it more evident than the base at Trenton. It's here that soldiers take their final steps on home soil before shipping out to Afghanistan, and where heroes return. 4,000 men and women are assigned to Trenton. The job of base command is a crucial one. In a ceremony in July 2009, now Colonel Russell Williams was sworn in as the new commanding officer. As wing commander, Williams had living accommodations on the base, but he also owned a cottage in Tweed, Ontario, about a half-hour's drive north along Highway 37, a quiet little town that was about to get a lot better known for the wrong reasons. Because some strange, soon-to-become terrible things were happening not far from CFB Trenton. When we return, the Russell Williams his neighbors saw.
I thought that he was kind of a loner because he never really had any friends there to speak of.
And the man who may know him best.
And he wasn't just some average person that was in my life. I mean, we were very close.
This land is your land, this land is my land.
Tweed, Ontario. Population 5,200. About midway between Toronto and Ottawa. A friendly town, especially on Canada Day. The kind of place where everyone seems to know everyone else. Colonel Russell Williams had owned this cottage in Tweed for 5 years before he took command of the Trenton Air Base in July 2009. His street, Cozy Cove Lane, is as it sounds, an idyllic lakefront location where no one locked their doors, at least not then. Williams' next-door neighbor was lifelong resident Larry Jones.
Pretty well every day he'd be here, off and on. And going and coming all hours, you never knew. Because he's a very busy man and he had a big job to do.
Williams' wife, Mary Elizabeth, worked in Ottawa and usually stayed at their house in Orleans. Jones says the colonel was often at the cottage alone.
Kind of a loner because he never really had any friends there to speak of. Maybe twice a year he'd have some friends there.
One of Williams' visitors at Cozy Cove was Jeff Farquhar.
I remember being there when he had first bought it. I think the deal was just barely done, and he called me to come out and take a look and gave me a tour of the place, and he was really excited to have a cottage.
They'd known each other since 1982, when the bearded 18-year-old Russell Williams was in his first year at the University of Toronto's Scarborough campus. Jeff Farquhar was assigned as his dorm mate. It was a rocky start.
For example, in the residence there were 6 of us, and he assigned tasks for us all. Two guys would be responsible for groceries, 2 more would be for cleanup of dinners and so on. And I remember looking at him thinking, who is this? Who is this person?
Williams' nickname was the Drill Sergeant, Sarge for short. He was also the residence prankster, pulling practical jokes that involved stealth, surprise, and opening locked doors. He would spend hours hiding in a roommate's closet, a trend that caught on.
And then when the roommate came in and sat down and started working on his desk, we would jump out and scream, and scare the bejeebers out of the roommate. So it got to be a regular thing. And okay, maybe Russ did start this, but again, I don't read any dark into that.
Jeff Farquhar says his best friend shared little about his background. A child of divorce, at boarding school and in college, Williams rarely saw his family, usually spending weekends and vacations in residence, often alone. As for a love life, Farquhar remembers him having just one girlfriend in college. Then, a bad breakup.
It was a tough one on him, for sure. I hadn't seen him that hurt ever in his life, and I'm not sure the time frame exactly, but maybe from age 20 on, I hadn't known him to have any girlfriends.
Age 20 to what?
Let's see, 30? Yeah.
So
probably roughly a 10-year period in there, I would think.
Afterwards, that relationship was off limits, even to his closest pal.
It wasn't an open subject, and just like his parents' divorce or whatever the situation was with his family, I wasn't going to poke and prod and pull at a scab. You know, that's not something you want to do to any of your friends.
But there was something Russell Williams didn't keep to himself. Though he had studied economics for 4 years, he suddenly announced he wanted to join the Air Force.
Good student, graduated, and right after that he said, I think I want to be a pilot. And I said, what the heck did you do all this for? You know, where's that coming from?
Apparently, at least in part from this, Tom Cruise in the hit movie Top Gun.
I feel the need for speed.
And actually, I was a little bit concerned because he was taking it way over the top.
In what way?
I really thought he was trying to live that, and so did a couple of us that knew Russ pretty well. And I thought, gee, he's really lost in a fantasy world here, because he had just had the recent nasty breakup. And I kept thinking to myself, oh no, now he's going to be a jet fighter and he's going to win the girl back.
In the years to come, Williams would make his fantasy reality, becoming one of Canada's top pilots, not flying fighters, but transport planes to war zones and natural disasters, and jets carrying prime ministers and other VIPs across the country and around the world. Through it all, Williams was the friend Jeff Farquhar had known since college, enthusiastic trumpet player, amateur photographer, MC at his wedding.
Well, good evening. My name is Russ Williams, and it's my pleasure and honor to welcome you on behalf of Jeff and Jody.
But there was much his pal still didn't share, like news of his impending marriage.
It was a complete shock. I mean, I was excited for him, but he hadn't been dating from university days, say from second year maybe on.
They've now been married almost 20 years. Farquhar says he thought the match with Mary Elizabeth Harriman, now a charity executive, was a good one. But with her in Ottawa and him at the base in Trenton, it was often a long-distance relationship.
And I can't tell you exactly what year it was that he said, well, now I'm at Trenton and I'm actually staying at Cozy Cove quite a bit rather than commuting all the way back to Ottawa. Mm-hmm. And Mary Liz is coming out on weekends, or I can go to Ottawa on weekends.
It was on a weekend in the fall of 2007 that a series of unusual break-ins began to unfold in and around Tweed. Russell Williams was at his cottage. Neighbor Larry Jones was at home next door when he got a frantic phone call from his daughter, who lived nearby. She'd come home from a party to surprise an intruder in jogging clothes.
Christine opened the door to go from the garage into the house and saw this long, tall figure run past out the door on the deck, jumped over the fence, and run off in the bush.
She thought it was just one of the neighborhood kids, and nothing seemed to be missing. It would be years before the police told her something different. In fact, it would be years until anyone put it together that beginning in 2007, according to court documents, when Russell Williams was at his cottage in Tweed, a multitude of bizarre break-ins would follow. Women's lingerie and underwear stolen. Almost all in his own neighborhood, especially on Cozy Cove Lane. It was the same pattern as the break-ins near Ottawa, in Orleans. Thefts sometimes so well executed, they weren't even noticed. When he took command at Trenton, the demands on Williams increased. Now responsible for thousands of military men and women, and often in the public eye. But following his promotion in July 2009, according to police records, the frequency of the break-ins increased too. There were 10 more in his first 2 months as wing commander. And all the while, Colonel Williams performed his official duties, golfing with hockey great Johnny Bower to raise money for military families, appearing at a charity drive to send gift boxes to soldiers abroad, cementing community relations, inviting local officials on a flight to the far north. The colonel returned from the Arctic on September 16, 2009, and according to the police, criminal activity in Tweed was about to take a brutal turn. Early on September 17th, a young mother was asleep near her 8-week-old baby. She said that about 1 in the morning, a male intruder invaded her house, sexually assaulted her, took photographs, and left about 3 a.m. That same day, while police investigated the assault, Colonel Williams was at the base, presiding over an attempt to set a Guinness World Record for pulling an airplane on the Trenton tarmac. The next night, there was another break-in, undetected at the time, incredibly at the same house where the sexual assault had taken place, a pattern of returning to the scene of the crime that would be repeated. The following day at the arena in Belleville, Colonel Williams took part in the opening of the junior hockey season.
Yes, I think I'll have the opportunity to drop the puck at the beginning, a ceremonial dropping of the puck early on.
The week after that, there was a third break-in at the scene of the sexual assault, the same day that Williams welcomed Defense Minister Peter MacKay to CFB Trenton. And according to the charges against Williams, at the end of September 2009, that pattern of criminal activity in Tweed would become even more extreme. That final week of the month, there were 2 more break-ins at a house not far from Williams' cottage. Then, there was a third break-in at that very same house. A woman was at home alone when she was surprised by a male intruder. She said he blindfolded her, tied her up, cut off her clothes, choked, beat, sexually assaulted, and photographed her for 2.5 hours. When she asked if he were going to kill her, she says his answer was, no need for that. She told police she thought she'd heard his voice before, but couldn't identify it. Because both sexual assault victims are subject to a publication ban, we won't reveal their names. According to Larry Jones, the day after the second sexual assault, the Ontario Provincial Police blanketed Cozy Cove Lane.
Knocked on the door, and if they weren't home, they'd come back the following day and have follow-up.
When they got to Russell Williams' door, there was no answer. The officer moved on to the Jones house.
He said, who lives next door? I said, Russ Williams, commanding officer for CFB Trenton. And he says, well, I guess there's no sense looking at that guy then. Just like that, eh?
Howard Gray and Anne Marsan-Cook have homes just a few kilometers away on Highway 37.
But we knew about it shortly after it happened, because things are fast out around here.
And the word in Tweed was that the 2 sexual assaults must have been done by one person.
There's a guy who's out there for women. I mean, I knew that. It can't have been no 2 guys doing the same kind of things. No, it had to be there. It had to be, for me, there was a connection, definitely.
And before long, the police apparently thought they had their man, a resident of Tweed, in fact, of Cozy Cove Lane. Russell Williams' next-door neighbor Larry Jones came home one day to find his house overrun by the OPP SWAT team.
I said, you're saying that I'm a suspect? Well, yes, you are our suspect. I said, you got to be kidding. I said, you should be looking at it in the right direction. I said, this is the wrong direction. It's unreal, unbelievable.
Remember, the second sexual assault victim thought she had recognized the voice of her attacker. For some reason, she guessed it was the voice of Larry Jones. Jones says it took a 3.5-hour interrogation, fingerprints, D.N.A, a more than 3-hour polygraph exam, and weeks of follow-up before the police finally told him he wasn't their man. But by then, for many people in Tweed, it was too late.
Well, after I was taken away and the neighbors saw me getting in the police car, well, right away, Larry Jones is the guy on Cozy Cove. He's the one that sexually assaulted those 2 women down the road. So I was guilty right there, in everybody's eyes.
After the break, what happened on Anne Marsan Cook's birthday?
I heard my name being called, the type of tone of voice I'd never heard before.
And the message left behind. And what went through your mind?
By then, I knew somebody was really out there for me. I mean, I knew that.
On the road from Tweed to Belleville, there's a 150-year-old farmhouse. The woman who lives here happens to teach music at the Trenton Air Base. It was a late afternoon in mid-November, her birthday, when Anne Marsan Cook arrived home to get ready for her party at a friend's place nearby.
So I was kind of looking forward and hurrying up to go.
She was alone in the house, she thought. She rushed upstairs to change.
What I remember, I went to the bedroom, and as I went to my dresser to get, change of clothes, I noticed that the bedside drawers, the little tables by the bed, the drawers were open.
Not only were the drawers open, but some personal items kept there were missing. Her sex toys, dildos as she calls them. She immediately thought someone in the family was playing a joke.
It's a bit of a laugh, really.
Yeah, we were having some laughs of what kind of yahoo would come in and do that.
When her neighbor Howard Gray arrived to pick her up, they debated calling 911.
Anne put the question to me, should I phone the police? And I said, no, because they won't even put ink to the paper. And I remember saying, I said, all they'll do is they'll use us as a good laughter at coffee break.
Yes.
Because of what it was that it was missing.
Right.
That's right, yes.
Right, and I said, there's no use doing it because they wouldn't even begin to take it seriously. So I told her, get your stuff, you're not staying alone here tonight. And we came downstairs, we went around, we checked all the doors, all the windows. Yep. And out we went.
The last thing they did was double check that the kitchen door was deadbolted from the inside. The following morning, after the party, Gray drove Marsan Cook home again. She went up to her office to photocopy something before work. What he heard next was her scream.
There's the type of voice where you react immediately that something's wrong. You just immediately react.
Dashing upstairs, he found her, speechless, trembling.
And she was just inside the door of the office, about 2 paces in, holding her hands like this, looking at the screen.
It was the screen of an old computer that was rarely used. It had been turned on, the screensaver disabled, and replaced by a chilling message. In large letters it said, "Go ahead, call the police. I want to show the judge your really big dildos."
Honestly, it's the first time I ever had the hair stand up on the back of my neck because it was right out of Hollywood. It was right out of Hollywood.
Then Marsan Cook checked her bedroom.
And then that's when I saw that my drawers, my underwear drawers, my 2 drawers were both open and empty. And that's when I lost it. I lost it.
Yeah,
I screamed and
really
screamed
big
and
scream.
screamed. And
the first big scream came when she opened up the one drawer, and then she shakenly she opened up the other door, and then the other big, and then she was a wreck then.
A wreck because she realized then that someone must have been in the house when she was the night before. Someone who'd come for her, who'd hidden in the closet, then typed that message, unlocked the kitchen deadbolt, and left. And what went through your mind?
by then I knew somebody was really out there for me. I mean, I knew that now. But he was angry to leave that message. I mean, I know he wanted to do just something more than just stealing my dildos and my underwear, to leave a message like that.
She also was convinced it was in some way related to the sexual assaults in Tweed. But Marsan Cook's house is located within the city limits of Belleville, so the break-in was investigated by the Belleville police.
I can't remember, it was either Ann or myself. Questioned the guys, is this connected to the Tweed? Why? What's going on back at Tweed? And I said, well, you got to know what's happening back at Tweed.
They admitted to you they weren't aware of the sexual assaults?
Yeah, because see, we're on Belleville, and that's OPP back at Tweed.
When Anne Marcin-Cook realized there'd been a failure to communicate, she started telling everyone she could what had happened to her.
I spread the messages now to all the women in the area and where I work on the base, and just lock your doors, lock your doors, lock your doors, like there's a guy out there.
But the warnings wouldn't be enough for a 38-year-old corporal at CFB Trenton who lived in Brighton, Ontario, about 30 kilometers from the base. Marie-France Como may have been military, but she was also a free spirit, according to former boyfriend and confidant Alain Plante.
Inside her, she was an artist, a bohemian, in love with life in general. Curiosity was one of her big things. She wanted to discover the world. She wanted to taste every meal that was available on the planet.
She had the right job for that, as a military flight attendant. In fact, Corporal Como had recently been a crew member on the aircraft carrying Prime Minister Stephen Harper on a state visit to the Far East. Alain Plante spoke with her when she got back.
She flew from Trenton over the Pacific to go to Japan. And from there, when they came back, they flew over the Atlantic. So she went around the world. I don't know many people who did that, so I was curious and happy for her, but because her dream was coming true.
3 days later, on November the 25th, her body was discovered inside her house. The cause of death was asphyxiation, first described as suspected suicide, then reclassified as murder. Like so much else here, the full story would take time to come out. Back in Trenton, the same day that Marie-France Como's body was found, Colonel Russell Williams was being handcuffed and arrested, laughing, as part of a publicity stunt for the local United Way fundraising campaign. Later, officially informed of Como's death, he wrote a letter of condolence to her family, saying, "Please let me know whether there is anything I can do to help you during this very difficult time." He didn't attend the funeral. In the months to come, Williams had his usual full schedule of events: the Olympic torch relay, holiday parties, consulting on relief operations with the Defense Minister and Chief of Defense Staff after the Haitian earthquake. Always the consummate officer. When we come back, the crucial clue that led to Russell Williams.
He said, "I had a shiver go down my spine." I said, "Yeah, I did too." And something's not right here.
Whenever Colonel Russell Williams would drive from CFB Trenton to his cottage in Tweed, Ontario, he went right past the house where a 27-year-old woman lived on her own. Her name was Jessica Lloyd. Her brother Andy describes his sister as friendly and vivacious.
Just very, very witty, very outgoing. Even people she didn't know, friends of mine she'd just meet, she'd be best friends with them within half an hour. So, yeah, it was very outgoing, very, very funny.
On January 28, 2010, Jessica Lloyd came home from an evening out. She sent a final text message to a friend before calling it a night.
It was said night-night, I believe it was. It was just kind of saying that was it, and assumed she was on her way to bed because it was 10:30 and she had to work at, 8 o'clock in the morning. And yeah, so that was the last anybody heard from her, was that text message.
It was that same night, about 3 a.m., that two local men drove south on Highway 37, headed to Belleville to pick up a load in their truck. They didn't know it yet, but they too went right past Jessica Lloyd's house. What was about to happen may well be the single most important event in this whole tragic story. It was frigid, with a full moon. Lyle Barker was in the passenger seat, struggling to stay awake.
I was just more or less looking to see, if I could see a wolf or something. Like, I'm a wildlife buff, so I'm always looking, and even when I'm driving, I'm looking, but, I was just looking to see if there's anything out poking around, and just happened to see the vehicle.
What he saw was an SUV parked in a field, some distance both from the road and from the nearest house.
It was very odd, because you never see anything like that at that time of year. It just didn't seem right, like shouldn't have been there. That's what my cousin said. He said, "I had a shiver go down my spine." I said, "Yeah, I did too." And something's not right here.
Lyle Barker and his cousin kept driving. It would be a while before they understood exactly what they'd seen. Later that day, Andy Lloyd got a phone call from his mother. Jessica had never arrived at work. Andy went right to her house.
That's what was so weird, is because everything was there, which why we couldn't figure out what had happened, because all of her identification, and I mean her cell phone and her purse and things people don't leave home without, were there.
As the following days unfolded, pictures of Jessica were everywhere. There was a massive search with a police helicopter and the search and rescue team from CFB Trenton. But something had been missing. Authorities hadn't drawn a specific link to the sexual assaults in Tweed, nor to the murder of Marie-France Como 2 months earlier, or the break-in on Anne Marcin Cook's birthday.
Back then, there was still no connection. They didn't know about my case, and I'm sure they didn't think about the Tweed girls either. They were just looking for a missing girl.
After Lyle Barker and his cousin returned from their trucking job, they saw Jessica Lloyd's face on all those missing posters. When they noticed police vehicles around the house on Highway 37, they put it together. It was the house next to the field where Barker had seen the SUV parked in the middle of the night, the house from which Jessica Lloyd had disappeared. That's when Lyle went to the police. When they reached the field, the weather was still frigid. It hadn't snowed since, and there were tire tracks preserved by the cold, exactly where Barker said they would be. The OPP set up roadblocks, checking the tires of cars on Highway 37. A week to the day after Jessica Lloyd vanished, Thursday, February 4th, one of those they stopped was Colonel Russell Williams, driving an SUV. They checked his tires, then let him go. Unbeknownst to Williams, he was under police surveillance from then on. Jessica Lloyd's disappearance not only heightened anxiety in Tweed, but also suspicion about Larry Jones. Jones says it reminded him of something odd that had happened a few months earlier. He was going hunting when his usually aloof neighbor made a beeline towards him.
And he walks across his lawn. "Hey, Larry, what's going on today?" I says, "Oh, just going partridge hunting, Russ." "Oh, and where do you partridge hunt?" I said, "Well, you know where the golf course is." "Yeah." I said, "Well, that's East Hungerford Road." I said, "Just go there past Kerry Road, and that's where our hunt camp is." "Oh, really?" "Well, anyway, I'm just heading to work. I'll see you later. Take care."
As you'll see, he would learn later what that conversation really meant. On Sunday, February 7th, Russell Williams was at his new house in Ottawa when the OPP called, asking him to the Ottawa Police Department to answer questions. It's been reported he thought they were going to ask about Larry Jones. Instead, Williams was informed the distinctive tires of his SUV matched the tracks in the field next to Jessica Lloyd's house. During a 9-hour interrogation, he cooperated with police. Investigators gave the sad news to the Lloyd family.
They didn't say what they thought had happened, just basically that she was gone and they had somebody in custody.
The next morning, Williams directed police to the body. The Lloyds had to wait until the news conference to learn who it was who had been charged with Jessica's murder.
Colonel Russell Williams is the 8th Wing Commander of CFB Trenton.
And that's also when Williams' neighbor Larry Jones heard where police had found the body.
The body of Jessica Lloyd was located this morning off Kerry Road in the municipality of Tweed.
It was the very location Jones had described to Russell Williams, his favorite hunting grounds.
Now, did you put two and two together when you learned where that was?
There's lots of roads way back in the boonies that you could put a body on and nobody'd ever find her. But no, you had to pick the road that goes to my hunt camp. And I said, "Well, geez, what's going on there?" I wonder. Sounds like he's trying to set me up, eh?
At their news conference, police revealed they'd found the crucial tire track, but not that it was Lyle Barker who told them where to look. Then Barker got a phone call.
I received an anonymous call that my tip had caught him. That it was worth its weight in gold.
Larry Jones has no doubt that if not for Barker's vigilance, he might well be the one behind bars, and Russell Williams wouldn't.
Like, the man thought he'd never going to get caught until he left those tire tracks behind Jessica Lloyd's house, which was a real godsend for me.
If he hadn't been caught,
I'd have been in jail now. Sure.
A top-ranking military officer was charged today with some very grave crimes.
Williams' arrest hit like a bombshell.
I was at a funeral of an Air Force officer here in Ottawa, and some of my Air Force colleagues who were still in uniform said, Russ Williams has been arrested for murder. And of course my reaction was one of shock and dismay like everybody else.
Retired Lieutenant General Angus Watt had promoted Williams to commanding officer at Trenton.
How could we have missed this? Is there something that we did or didn't do that would have given us a clue? And everything I've heard and everything I've seen and everybody I've talked to has the same reaction. There was no clue.
With the exception of Russell Williams' wife, who has not spoken publicly since, it's possible no one took it harder than his friend Jeff Farquhar.
I'll never forget that day, of course. I heard the 5 o'clock news, and I heard the name Williams, and I heard murder, charge, and then I heard Cozy Cove. And what? What? And I jumped up and I immediately turned on the TV, and right there on the news was Russ's face. His pictures were all over. And I'm telling you, it hit me like, yeah.
it hit everyone, but this is your best friend for a quarter of a century. It's impossible to imagine
how you
react to that.
I mean, it made me physically ill to my stomach. It felt like someone had kicked me in the groin as hard as it could a couple of times. I vomited. I just couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it.
Farquhar says he decided to speak out after realizing he may never get the answers to the questions he needs to ask his friend, foremost among them, why?
Obviously, I can't even imagine what the families of those victims are going through. But it doesn't add up in any way to the person that I've come to know and respect. And he wasn't just some average person that was in my life. I mean, we were very close. And for it all to end with some heinous crimes, I just don't get. And I keep thinking there had to be something terribly wrong has happened to Russ in those last years that have produced this, because I can't believe for a minute that he was a bad seed.
But how to explain all the awful details? In addition to the murders and sexual assaults Williams is accused of, search warrants obtained by police for Williams' homes in Tweed and Ottawa led to boxes and boxes of female apparel. Not just bras and panties, but bathing suits, robes, even shoes, as well as photographs of some of the young girls and women who owned them, all apparently painstakingly stored and cataloged in a notebook, recording when and where they were stolen. It's how the police were able to tell Brian Rogers and Brenda Constantine, Larry Jones' daughter Christine, and Marcin Cook, and all the others, that it was Russell Williams who'd invaded their homes. For many, like Marcin Cook, it's had a lingering cost in locked doors and lost trust.
I have bad dreams, nightmares, and I can't stay alone very well. But I can't imagine the other girls. I mean, Jessica, she's dead in some ways. I feel sorry for the poor girls in Tweed. And that's why I want him dead.
She believes if police forces had better informed residents about everything that happened, Jessica Lloyd might have been on guard and perhaps survived.
Nothing was said about anything, and Jessica wasn't part of my, she was a younger woman. She wasn't part of my surrounding women friends or friends of friends. So, I mean, I just feel sorry that maybe she would be still alive.
There's no consolation and no end in sight for those left behind, like Marie-France Comeau's friend, Alain Plante.
Her presence beside me, just being able to touch her. I miss that.
As for Russell Williams, he's in solitary confinement at the detention center in Napanee, Ontario, at one point under a suicide watch after reportedly trying to kill himself by stuffing a cardboard toilet roll down his throat. Guards got to him in time.
I have talked to some people who, through other intermediaries, have talked to him, and the feedback I got was immediately after the arrest, his psychological condition was very poor. His entire world had been blown up.
By him.
By him, yeah, no doubt about it. He had blown up his entire world, and that went right through until his suicide attempt. And after his suicide attempt, the word I heard is that he's reconciled himself to the situation and understands his fate.
For retired Lieutenant General Angus Watt and so many others in uniform and out, the judgment of Colonel Russell Williams will undoubtedly be harsh.
And this is a huge betrayal of the profession, a huge betrayal of the honor of the military, and we take this very personally. The people that knew Russ Williams, that shepherded him along in his career, that helped him at key points, that selected him, as I did, for senior leadership positions, view this as the ultimate betrayal of that honor, and we will never forgive him.